Chapter 18. Isabella was right, of course. Bach's head felt like his sister had used it as an anvil, but he shoved aside the pain, bowled past Kotarian, and forced his head clear. He knelt over his injured friend, whose head rested on Isabella's lap. His blood quickly stained her white robe.
Be easy, my love. Don't try to move. Help is here.
To Bach's surprise, Aventil started to regain consciousness. A good sign, although he remained delirious and weak. What worried Bach now was the nasty gash on the back of his friend's scalp. Bach touched Aventil's head with his fingertips. The blow hadn't fractured Aventil's skull, but it had cut him badly. If Bach didn't act quickly, Aventil would bleed to death. Bach carefully lifted Aventil's head and placed it on a pillow as Isabella held his hand. Easy. You've taken a pretty good knock, my friend. Just stay still. He dug around his healer's bag as the noble groaned. Bach pressed a clean white rag hard against Aventil's wound to staunch the bleeding. He then rubbed some white powder on the cut to further slow the flow of blood. Ow! Aventil cried. So you are in there. Bach quickly swapped out a clean cloth to cover the wound. If you can feel pain, that's a good sign. And you're about to get more good signs than you ever imagined. Removing a needle and a spool of thick thread from his bag, Bach sewed up the cut. Aventil winced with each new stitch. Ah, that really hurts, he yelled with all the force in his lungs, which wasn't much after the severe beating he had received. But the bleeding stopped, and Bach was able to stitch up Aventil's other wounds. Aventil tried to sit up, but Isabella stopped him and gently put his head back in her lap.
Shh. Rest easy, my love.
She stroked the hair from his face as Bach finished treating the wound on his arm. Once he finished, Bach pulled another powder made from ground roots from his healer's bag, mixed it with some wine, and handed it to Aventil. Ugh, this smells awful. You can't be hurt too badly if you were complaining about the Yorka root. Back home, we string it up around the fields to keep the rabbits from eating our vegetables. They hate the smell that much. But you need to drink it. It'll take the sting out of that headache and help you get some rest. Aventil gulped down the thick brown potion with a grimace. When he came to Corrigan, Bach could see the older man's legs trembling, even as his facial expression remained unchanged. Bach pulled aside the man's bloody shirt and almost gasped. Brett's sword had slashed deeply and left ragged, uneven wounds in Corrigan's shoulder. It would take more than a bit of knitting powder and some thread to repair these cuts. He needed to try his most powerful healing spells, the ones Winnie taught him and that he had yet to completely master. Corrigan, you're hurt. You need to lay down. I'm fine, Bach. I've been cut far worse than this in my line of work. Just sew me up like you did the boy. Bach's hands shook. I must prepare a healing spell. I'll need to gather some supplies, and you need to lay down while I do it. No, I tell you, I'm fine. Corrigan waved him off. Besides, there's no time. I'll rest when we're back on safe grounds. I'm not arguing. I'm telling... Just then, Bach heard a second set of moans from across the room. Kaz Kosan was reviving. Bach figured his conversation with Corrigan would have to wait. What? Where am I? Wingate held the man's arms, and Corrigan stepped in to interrogate their would-be killer. But Isabella raised her hand. Let me speak with him. The princess knelt beside the groggy, wounded assassin. Kaz tried to push himself off the floor, but slipped and fell face first back to the hardwood and into a pile of down from Aventil's disemboweled pillow. She waved her glowing hand over his head and whispered a few words. Bach couldn't hear what they were, but he could tell she was casting some sort of spell. Should you speak an untruth, your tongue will swell,
until it literally explodes in your mouth. So think carefully before you answer my questions. Do you understand? Steel crept into her voice where moments before there had been only compassion for Aventil. The assassin's eyes bulged. He nodded demonstratively. You need to say it, but be careful. Do you understand what I have done to you? "Y- Yes, Cos stammered. His hands gingerly touched the sides of his stubby round cheeks. Good. Now why did you attack us? "W- We was hired to kill ya, ma'am. We was we was told yuns is merchants carrying gold, then to make it look like a robbery. We didn't know you uns is sorcerers, honest."
Obviously not. Had you known, you certainly wouldn't have been so foolish, Kotarian said.
Enough!
Isabella silenced the ever-smirking sorcerer with a single glance.
Now I want you to tell me who told you this. And if you value your life, or at least fear an agonizing death, you will not leave out a single detail. I don't know, honest.
The assassin's once steady hands trembled.
A man met us at a bar here in Nassim. Said he knew we was interested in this kind of work. You mean they knew you were criminals who would mercilessly kill for money?
Isabella fixed her gaze on Cos, who still laid stomach first on the floor.
Yeah, that's right.
He looked at the floor to avoid her condemning stare.
Anyway, he told us he would pay 500 golds each.
500 gold? The entire village of Sola Valley couldn't come up with 500 gold, even if they sold every home, animal, and stick of furniture in the community. And the agents behind this attack were willing to pay that to each of these hired killers? Bach looked around to see if anyone else was as astonished as he was, but no one seemed to be.
If the others got in our way, we was to kill 'em, too, all except for him, the blonde feller.
Cos pointed a grease-stained finger at Kotarian. Me? Why me? Kotarian lifted his hand to his puffed-out chest. Doesn't your master know what I can do? Why would he not want me killed? Bach was surprised at the tone. He seemed offended that his name got left off the list of murder victims.
I dunno, Cos sputtered. I wondered that myself, but he wouldn't tell me who you were or why he wanted you dead. The man just said we was sending a message if we took care of the lady.
Given how fast he's breathing and how his hands are shaking, I don't think he's lying. Magic can have that effect on people. Isabella exhaled deeply. She took her time with the interrogation, making Cos sweat out every question and answer.
What can you tell us about this man who hired you?
The anger behind her soft, slow voice scared Bach, and more than a little. The Princess Isabella he knew was kind, thoughtful, gentle, but threatened those dear to her, including her subjects, and she became as hard as the iron his sister and father forged in their blacksmith shop. Even though the assassins had tried to kill them, Bach couldn't help but feel a touch sorry for the man begging for his life before him.
Honest, I can't tell you nothing about him.
The princess leaned over until she was merely inches away from the assassin.
You met him at a bar. Surely you remember what he looked like, what he wore, whether he had any sort of accent that might identify his country of origin. Well, that's just it. I can't, Cos squealed. I remember exactly what he said, but when I think about the man, nothing.
Tovano put his hand over his mouth.
This fellow is telling the truth. His mind has been clouded by a powerful enshroudment spell. He truly cannot remember the man who hired him. I suppose not.
Isabella stood, but continued to watch the assassin, who dared not move off the floor. Behind them, heavy footsteps, accompanied by even heavier breathing, lumbered up the stairs.
"What's the meaning of this? What have you done to my inn?"
the innkeeper panted.
"They come and get me out of bed. Say, it sounds like a riot is taking place in this room. And from the look of things, they are right."
Isabella reached into an embroidered silk purse and pulled out a handful of coins.
"Sir, we simply wish to enjoy a delicious meal and a good night's sleep at your fine establishment. Then, with neither warning nor provocation, these 4 cutthroats broke into our room and tried to rob us."
She handed the coins to the innkeeper. His expression immediately changed from angry to astonished.
"Here are 5 gold. This should cover any damages as well as compensate you for your troubles."
Isabella then pointed to Cause, still on the floor.
"Please contact the local constables and have him arrested. He will confess to his crimes. My friends and I will leave your inn immediately and spare you any further aggravation."
Isabella motioned to Bach and Wingate, who carefully put Aventil's arms over their own shoulders to carry the injured nobleman out of the inn. The innkeeper pinched, scratched, and bit the coins to discover that, yes, they were truly gold.
"But how am I supposed to keep him here until the constables arrive?" "Do not worry. He will not give you any trouble." "If you say so, miss."
The innkeeper looked askance at the assassin, who remained perfectly still on the floor, as if his life depended on it, because, as far as Bach was concerned, it did. Isabella walked out of the disheveled room behind Bach, Aventil, and Wingate. Bach turned to Isabella.
"Believe me, I will care for him like he was my own family." "I know you will, Bach. That was never in doubt. It is just, I knew this journey could prove dangerous. But coming so close to losing Aventil, to losing you all, that was more than I was prepared to handle."
Bach understood.
"I feel the same way, Your Majesty, and I'm going to do everything I can to make sure neither of us feels that way again."